Hey everyone, it's Classic DM, and I think I have an extremely cool surprise for you today. I think you're going to really, really like it. So, let's talk about one of the biggest problems everyone's having right now. So, we're all trying to stay at home. No one's playing any D&D. Some people are trying to play, Roll 20, which I think is terrible, or Fantasy Grounds, which is a huge price threshold to get in there. So, I've been experimenting with battle maps, right? And the Indigo Oasis is a module I converted to multiple different game systems to SRD 5.1, which is essentially 5th edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons version, and my Pathfinder 2nd edition version. And if you remember this module, one of the things you do as a party is you travel across this big expansive desert, right? You may remember the storyline if you've seen the previous videos. I provided some pre-generated characters. There's some, links to the books and things like that. But the main storyline is you travel across this desert and you end up in this magical oasis and all this cool stuff happens, right? What if I told you that, you don't have to just have the static pictures to imagine it? Why don't you just actually have the whole thing in real time? And I think that's where we need to change the face of what we're doing today when we make battle maps. You don't need to have static maps. You don't need to have hand-drawn chicken maps like this. What you really need to do is to do this stuff in real time. So why don't we just take a look for a few minutes, if you mind indulging me, and I'll show you the power of what you can do in real time. You ready? First, we're going to have to get some sounds, right? We've got to have some sounds. I love sounds. People hate the sounds they have on cell phones. So, what does this sound like? Kind of sounds like, water lapping somewhere, maybe like in an oasis like this, right? So, you have this really cool, awesome battle map, right? And we talked about this the other day, how we need cool battle maps where you can have your miniatures and you can roll your dice and it can be a real time. And what was the method we said we were going to do? So, oh yeah, we'll make it a video, right? So, oh, that sounds like a really good idea. You just have a video looping, and that's really great. You can then you'll be able to figure out what's going on. You can even go into close-up views, right? Remember me talking about going to close-up views? That sounds pretty cool. You can adjust the lighting and stream this over the web. I don't think that's good enough. I think we could do something much cooler than that. You want to do something much cooler than that? Let's do something much cooler than that. I tell you what, let's do. Let's just let's go somewhere else. Yeah, why don't we go over here? Let's go to the other side of this oasis. Yeah, we'll go over here. You can have your fight out here at the edge of the oasis. In fact, let's just rotate it this way and show what it looks like from the other direction. So you can have your fight out here in the middle of the sand, right? Or maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, what does it look like when I'm down there at the oasis? Does it look like this? So this is where things get crazy. So far, everyone's playing D&D, and we're all using battle maps, right? And battle maps are totally awesome. Let's just move this over here a little bit. Let's say you got a battle on the edge of this oasis. You can DM, you can rotate this around. So good, you have a battle, you have a fight outside, you have a fight outside the oasis, and you've got you got the sand moving and all this kind of stuff, and you're projecting this on a monitor, and you have close-up views, all this kind of stuff. Well, what if we wanted to go see somewhere else in the oasis? Let's just pop down here. Let's go to this one here. Let's go to another oasis. Let's go back F11. Here we are, F11, drop the selection. Here's another oasis. Now you have a big map. So instead of having to pull up a big map that kind of looks like, this, right? What is this, right? What is this? What do we got here? Why would you want to go here? Why would you? What? Oh, I know. It's like a big desert, right? Instead of having this big goofy map and this big adventure, you do like this. You just have a real-time map. So, well, wait a minute. What are you talking about here? Let's see how this works. So you can have a map like this, and you can zoom around, and you can zoom in close. And when you get ready to have a combat sequence, you can have a combat sequence right down here at whatever scale you want. And you can even have a situation where if the players are exploring something, you can actually see what it looks like when you're down here at eye level. So that means attention to detail can make a big difference. And we're talking about high resolution detail stuff here. In fact, let me turn this camera down, speed down a little bit for us. Let's unselect those static meshes. This is all in Unreal Engine 4. So now you can see, wow, great place to take a screenshot, huh? Turn the view back up, zoom back up, you can have a battle. So instead of just having to always imagine everything, you can have a real-time map, and you can show everyone what's going on, what the view is. So say you have your adventurers are just traveling across the desert itself, right? We'll just go out here and fly across the desert, right? Fly into the sun. Let's go back and look at this desert. I'm going to turn these background sounds off while I keep talking to get hard for you guys listening to this on your phones and you hate it. So now you have this massive, there's the sun in the distance, and you can look down all these sand dunes, right? So not only can you see it, you can come down here and have a fight in the desert, or you could go over to another location like this rocky field. You could talk with your map and tell your players, they're going across the caravans, going across the desert, and then suddenly they're in this rocky field and they get jumped by these bunch of these dudes here come out of a caravan. Put your miniatures and your prop. Don't forget, remember, it's a real table, so it's not just completely fake. And then when the fight's all over with, you can zoom down here to eye level, and see what does it look like. What's this rocky field really look like? That's really cool. Now you don't see the miniatures, unfortunately, because they're not really there. But you can see little details like this, like the sand going by over these rocks. So this is a really neat idea. I think it kind of boggles people's minds when they see it, because they don't realize they're so used to just looking at maps and having to fill in the gaps themselves. It's pretty crazy. In fact, let's just go over here to this stone pit. So here's a rock. Let's go to the stone pit. Let's go back F11. And you could have this stone pit area here. So you could talk to your players about it. This big baddie's down in here. And maybe your players are approaching from this way, right? So your players are approaching from this direction here. So, and initially you got to tell them, like, set the stage, what's going to happen. So where would be a good place to do that from? Well, you may want to say, well, you see this stone pit in the distance, and it looks kind of like this, right? So here's the stone pit, and say, oh, well, what do you want to do? Well, I think we're going to try approaching really slowly, see if we can see anyone there. Well, if you wanted to, you could actually say, okay, as you guys start walking closer and closer, you see a bunch of rocks. It looks like there's maybe like a cave or something down there. You're like, oh, really? What do you want to do? Is there anything else around here? Well, look off to the north. I see this way. Or you look off to the west towards the sun. It's kind of hard to see. The sun's up here. You have the light, the lens flare of the sun in your eyes. Or you look down to the south and just see dunes, a big, beautiful blue sky going by. And this could be a night and day cycle, too. So everything's clear and empty. And you have this little rocky pit directly ahead of you. It's almost like being a first-person shooter. Now, you have to kind of imagine the grid. Yeah, I've got the grid that's on plexiglass, so it's not always there. But you could get in closer and say, as you come over to the edge of the pit, you see these two dudes in there rummaging through a bunch of skeletons, and boom, you're going to have a battle map. So you could go like this. Boom, switch it back up, right? Pull the camera back up. I'm going to change this camera speed just a touch here, just for me, because it's easier. Unselect this mesh, and I say, okay, all right, here we go, guys. Here's your battle map. The guys are in the pit. This guy's, I just leave this alone. You can now start playing the game. You got the map positioned. The map doesn't get bumped while you're playing with it. And you can have, your cleric and your fighter comes rushing down to the pit. Then your magic user jumps on top on this upper level and nukes down here. And you can say, okay, well, what does that look like? How deep is the pit? So, well, I'll just give you a second. Let me just give you a chance to see what this pit really looks like. So when you're down the pit, it's like this, right? So you have all these rocks and everything. So where you're talking about your magic user, she's up here on the upper level, casting spells, shooting down. So you can turn the map back to the north again, and then zoom back up, right? And then get a better sense of where everyone is in the map, and get the distance out to whatever you think is appropriate distance, where she's sitting right here, like this. Maybe even adjust it over a little bit. And then just let go of the map and leave it alone, and then go back to playing the game again. Have fun and do all the stuff, and dudes get killed, and you can loot the bodies, and she can come around this way, line of sight, all this kind of business. So really crazy, because the fun thing, I think, is the, D&D still needs to be part of your imagination. The wonderful part about it, bring your little close-up camera if you want to do that. The beautiful thing about it is having the feeling like you're really there, right? We're down in the pit. We're fighting down this stone pit in the middle of the desert. Clerics and bass casting heels. Casters up on the top of the cliff, nuking down, and you can see the stuff in real time. And it's a night and day cycle, and the lighting's all moving, everything. So it has this really cool kind of vibe to it. So that's really neat. And if you you don't have to worry about having to have thousands and thousands of pre-drawn maps. You just move the map. So when they get done with that encounter, take these guys off the board, put them over here if you want for the time being, and ask your players, well, what do you want to do now? So, well, we want to. Let's say the players say, well, is there anything down the pit that we can see? So instead of you saying, well, you're in a stone pit and it's really dirty and there's lots of rocks and stuff and some weeds, and you're like, well, is there what those skeletons those guys were looking at? Well, as you look over the edge of the stone pit, the sand comes blowing down over the edges, and right over here you see looks like a little glimmer of light or something. And they go look over here, and there's like this rock, and maybe there's like a key buried underneath this rock, and they find this key. Or there could be little tidbits hidden in here. in fine detail, because once you get, that's the beauty of the game engine, is once you get close, you can have all this tremendous detail, which is a lot better than you would have normally anything else. You can even have things like, there's a rune on one of these rocks, right? A clue to something, a painted orc symbol. Now, at the same time, remember, this is just one little place. You could move this all the way over here, have a fight over here. You could do anything you want to do because you have this massive, huge, real-time world. You can do anything you want. You can say, okay, guys, you can actually do it like this. Like, here's what, let's do it this way, right? You can bring your screen up for your players watching on Twitch, and then you, behind the scenes, you can say, okay, I need to move everyone to a new area. We're going to move everyone to this Oasis. It's going to take me a moment. I'm just going to clip, and I'm going to go back to this big screen view, and I'm going to say as you're going across the desert, you reach the crest of the moon as you're heading to the east, and as you cross the hill, you see this. Let's just get the ugly camera out of the way. So you have this view of this oasis in the distance, and the players can figure out what they're going to do, and you can talk about it, and they can look, or you can tell them they can look around and say, well, what's off this way, or what's off this way, or what's off this way, or where'd we come from? And they may say, well, let's go down to the oasis. Well, which side do you want to go down to? And you're like, well, we want to try to work our way down to this, down this slope here, and work our way down to this side of the oasis over here. And I'm just using a free camera. As you get closer, you might tell them that, well, up ahead you see this series of rocky outcroppings, and it looks like there's some movement down there. They're like, oh, really? Gosh, what should we do? Well, you might say, well, okay, roll for initiative, dude. So you might have a situation, now you take the camera and pull it in closer like this, and now you have this rocky outcropping like this. Maybe turn the map back to the north again if you want to keep it always facing north. Here's the edge of the oasis. And you could have, here's your players coming across the desert sands, and suddenly these dudes come whipping up on top of these rocks, and here's your dwarf fighter dude, and here's the other dude, and they come rushing forward, and you roll for initiative. You see who wins initiative, and this person closes the gap, and he moves 25 feet. This guy fights here, and you have this big nasty battle on top of the rocks with the oasis in the background. If you look very, very closely, there's stuff moving and animating in the background, like the sand is trickling over the edges of the rock. And if you wanted to be really total amazing GM, you can always play like a little soundtrack in the background, the wind and the annoying chirping bird and all that kind of cool stuff in the background. And then when the battle's all done and everything's dead, and saying that everyone says, okay, we killed these dudes, they're out of the picture now. I want to go see what's down here. Let me go look over here on the edge. What do you see? So instead of you having to be this really fantastic, articulate, storyteller, well, you still need to be a great storyteller. You can say, okay, well, you're going to go down to here, right? All right, let's just see what you see. So from here, you look out and you see here's the oasis beyond. And you can look to the right and there's more outcroppings, and you look to the left. Let's just get rid of that selected object, because this is all real-time level and real. And then they can say, well, we want to go over here. We want to go down over this way some. Okay, so you start walking around the edge of the oasis, and when you get to about here, you notice across the way, it's just full of lush vegetation. You notice that across the way, that there's another cave outcropping across the way here. What do you want to do? It's like if you go to the left, does it go around? Yeah, if you go to the left, it goes all the way around where the shady part is. And if you go to the right, it goes all the way around this way. So you say, well, someone be like, well, I want to swim out to the island, right? You're like, oh, okay. So which way do you want to swim out to the island from? I want to kind of put the island between me and the cave opening. So you kind of want to do it like this, right? So you want to swim out to the island from about right here. What does the water look like? Do you have any caimans in the water? So you can say, well, there might be. Let's just take a look at that. Let's see what happens here. So you could have this brought up like this to about your miniature scale, and you basically have a free battle map for someone who needs to do a check to Dwarven plate mill guy tries to swim across the water, and as soon as they get 2 feet deep in the water, you get attacked by alligators or something like that, right? And so you get all these two guards were in the bushes and they were sleeping. They heard you splashing around your armor, and now they come whipping out and start shooting bows at you while you're in the water. What do? Make a rush for it, or go back and get out of range of the bow fire? So you can have this cool kind of situation, because the scale of the miniatures and the distances, it's kind of up to you. Like if you don't like that distance, right, you could say, well, I want it to be a little closer, right? So you want the battle map to be closer. So they're in the water here, put these guys back on the land. So there's no one really has to decide the scale. You can say, well, I'm just going to stay on the shore the cleric and the caster are going to stay on the shore while Mr. Dwarf guy tries to be a hero and swim across, right? So you could be like, well, that's the scale I like. And if someone's like, well, how much further is it to me to get to the other side? So this, this is your dwarf dude right here. You're like, okay, let's just give you an idea of how far away it is. So swimming across, this is about how much more you got to go. Your friends are back on the shore, back over here, and you're trying to swim across over here. So you get back over to the shoreline, and you can have one player. One player is having combat here on the shoreline, right? You can have a map with him. He's getting attacked by dudes on the shoreline. The other characters are now off the screen, right? And you can just adjust that scale to whatever you think feels cool. Like here's a big palm tree. You may want to make the scale like this. You can pull up really high like that if you wanted to. You can pull it even higher. Some of these palms are really tall. You can say whatever scale feels good for you, right? And say you want to make I want to make the fight a little closer. I want someone to feel like I'm right next to the trees. These trees are pretty big. You want to keep them more in scale. So you can say, okay, well these guys are here, and you're having a fight with these two dudes, and you fight them on the shoreline. And then when that's all done, you can transition back over to the other characters over here on the shoreline and what they want to do. So the ability to move the map around, as long as someone's brain doesn't flip out, going between a first-person view and basically, which is seeing everything in first person like a first-person shooter, but it does allow you to have this sense of like, well, we want to kind of crawl closer and see what we see. We thought we saw a cave over here. When you get this area here, as a DM, you could think of what could you do to make this more of a compelling gameplay space. So even by having the digital map first, right, you can say to yourself, well, what can I do to make an Oasis really, really neat? You've got all these opportunities here to do stuff, like where all these rocks are. Could there be other guards? There's no architecture in here at all. This is just natural landscape. Even to get a sense of like, what's it like to have a battle along here versus what it's like to have a battle along here, and where this dune goes up underneath this outcropping like this. And you might say someone has to climb up this rock to get up there. So in a battle map situation, if you're looking at it from this perspective, you've got someone that's, here's a bad guy on this upper rock, and here's a bad guy on this rock, and here's your dwarf dude, and he wants to say this guy's down below. Say the dwarf dude kills this guy, he's dead, and he wants to attack this guy. Well, this is up a step, 1, 2, 3, 4 to climb up here. Until he wants to get up there and fight him, he might say, well, how much of a climb is it? Well, so you could just go down here, this perspective, and say, well, you're going to have to climb up. You've got a little bit of a step to make here. You got to climb up this whole step here before you can get up to the top. Then you can take that map right back out to where it was and continue the fight from there. So there's a lot of potential with this kind of stuff. It's a little bit, if you don't rotate the map around too much, it gets a little wonky. But in essence, you're just using a real-time game engine. Let's get these guys out of here to cover our crappy art abilities. Don't worry, it's dry erase. To help visualize beautiful environments. So the use of a game engine like this, and a lot of the stuff you can get on the Unreal Marketplace, stuff already built. You can take screenshots for your module. So I'm going to be using this kind of stuff for, and as a DM behind the scenes, I can click to predetermined locations pretty quickly. I can go to one of the other lagoons real quickly. Just change my camera type to a different speed. Go back F11, and I can transport myself to the other Oasis really, really quickly. And you might have a situation where here's another Oasis over here where the party's going to go adventure. It's got a land bridge that's connecting between the two that kind of looks like this, which is the main starter area for this map normally. So you might have something happening in this area like this where these mud puddles are, right? So you might have that kind of battle situation where your druid is here with and there's this two guards over here by these puddles hanging out. Let's just use the guards that aren't paying attention, these spearmen from this Song on Fire and Ice. You could turn on another light so things are illuminated a little bit better. And then have the monk and the druid try to sneak through the bushes to get over here. And if you don't like the scale of that, you can always just pull that scale up a little bit more. If you pull it too high, you can you start where you can't see as good. So there's a lot of potential with this kind of stuff. After you have the fight, you can always say the players want to get a sense of what is this area here? Why were they standing next to this puddle? And then you can just go, okay, let's just take a look, and you can see what that looks like. You can drop that camera speed down a little bit to something a little more normal, like walking around. And this is what it looks like from first-person perspective, where you can actually see all the way down to a silver piece sitting in the water. Is that freaking awesome? I freaking love it. I love it. I don't know if you knew this, but I was one of the original level designers in the very first Unreal game in Unreal Tournament. So it's so awesome to see how the game engine has evolved after 20 some odd years. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity for dungeon masters to really bring a lot of vibrant life to their world. And because there's a tremendous community of people in the Unreal community that build environments, they sell props, they sell details, they sell Diablo ruins, they sell all kinds of things. So if you want to put together your own adventure, they're not doing it for this reason. You want to put together your own adventures around a cool biome theme, everything from redwood forest to frozen landscapes to massive, huge deserts that stretch as far as the eye can see. You can do that kind of stuff. All right, cool. So I just wanted to share that video with you today. I thought it was a really, really neat opportunity to be able to transition between, battle maps that are real-time 3D and people can play over the internet. You don't have to be here in person because this is just a web camera pointing at a television, right? So it's up to the DM. You say to yourself, what can I do to make this pile of rocks in the middle of nowhere interesting? And when you just describe the stuff to your players, it's kind of like, well, up ahead you see like a really odd pile of rocks. It kind of looks like somebody, stacked them in a funny pattern. And a pair of players, they always pick up on those tips. They're like, oh, I want to go there and check it out. What's up with these rocks? What's going on with that? Well, you could show them. You don't need to have a screenshot. Remember the Tomb of Horrors and all the old modules? You could just show them this, strange little pile of rocks. Let them see it from all angles. And then they could ask questions about it, and maybe you could add more details. And even as a DM, you might say, you know what? I wonder if I could hide something really cool in this pile of rocks. Like, is there a sword hilt, like sticking out right here that no one else knows about on this one rock face? And instead of having to describe what these rocks look like, you could just say, well, you walk up to this huge, massive boulder. It looks like it at one point had blue paint on it, all on the side here, where it's been chiseled away. These other red paint marks or rust marks on here. You're like, wow, that's really cool. Does that mean anything? And maybe this was once it was a temple. And then the players can go check out that other area. So it really prompts you as a dungeon master, I think, to create more detail in your world because the details in the real-time environment as opposed to having to just be in your imagination. And there's nothing wrong with having an imagination at all. But for young people, you're playing with your little ones and teach them how to play D&D. If you tell them about these guards that are staying over by these pillars at night and you want to sneak up on them, it really helps them visualize stuff a lot better. Okay, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I thought it was really cool. There's a number of biomes. I'm going to see if I can pick a few more up. The reason why I wanted to do this is because I'm working on a sequel to the Indigo Oasis, which I recently have converted to all three of the major versions of role-playing games. So it's been converted from Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It's been converted to the 5.1 SRD, which basically services the 5th edition of D&D. I also converted to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons with Osric. So you now have tons of free adventure to play with you and your friends. And I think this is a really cool way to... let's go look at this other lagoon here. Just make this big screen again. And I'm running this off a laptop, like a gaming rig laptop. And, even if you just want to take screenshots of these things with your own grid, there's Battle Map 1 right there. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. I thought it was a really cool idea. I think it has huge potential. I think that for someone who's in creating their own adventures, to make it come alive for your audience who are playing, being able to see what they see and show them what they see brings a lot more detail, things a lot more alive. What I was doing previously was capturing video from Black Devs Online, which means there's no design work. I'm having to use an existing world designed by somebody else. So this gives you, if you want to spend some time learning on how to use Unreal 4 and build some of your own environments, or buy a purchased environment like this one is. This is a pre-built environment by a group of guys in Germany called MAWI GmbH. They make some of the most incredible biomes. I strongly recommend you check it out. I'll put a link in the description to this video so you can check out their work. They're totally top notch. I mean, I'm an old school level designer. Even I couldn't build something this good anymore. It's just too good. It's just way too good. So the ability to mix and blend between the overhead battle map and all the way down to the complete subtle details of what's going on in the environment, it's just it's just unsurpassed for video games and also for role-playing games and tabletop. All right, stay safe, don't get sick, and be sure to take lots of vitamins. We'll talk to you later. Take care.